Hi everybody. My name is Andrea from Hong Kong Shark Foundation. We would just we would like to say thanks very much to AAC for inviting us again this year to speak. It's fantastic. We are active as always in making our mission, which is 5 words. To raise awareness about shark conservation. So just a little bit about me and my story. I've been in Hong Kong 30 years, and I was working in the corporate world up until 2015 when I quit my job and started to volunteer for the Shark Foundation. And today I'm the executive director for Hong Kong Shark Foundation. We are a Hong Kong charity. We are a very small local charity, but we like to collaborate with other organizations, like, for example, our esteemed speaker, Kim McCoy. And we are very interested in talking to other people about getting the word out and educating people. I am an educator. I'm a farmer. I like to plant the seeds of change. And one of those ways is being invited and talking to people like you about what are the problems, what is the problem with the global shark crisis, and what can you do to help out? So today we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration and the problem and what's going on, and just kind of bring people up to speed about the shark crisis from my side, and what we can do to be better advocates for animal rights and for animal compassion. So that is basically about myself. Over to you, Kim.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to you about animals and everything animal related. So I'm a barrister by trade. I'm qualified in New Zealand and Hong Kong, hence the accent. I started the Hong Kong Animal Law and Protection Organization last year because I realized that even though Hong Kong had a lot of laws relating to animals, they actually weren't doing anything. So the fact that we have laws are great, but they actually have to do something. And I realized that, you know, we have all of these animal cruelty cases, we have shark fin related cases, we have wildlife trafficking, and we've got laws to stop all of that, but nothing ever gets done. So I started this organization really to bring together people who want to make a change in terms of the legal sphere, hopefully get some law changes into Hong Kong and to make and protect animals better. So the membership that we have is largely based with law students, but we welcome anyone who wants to make a change to animal law in Hong Kong. We work very closely with amazing organizations such as the Hong Kong Shark Foundation. And I mean, what we all have the same goal. We want animals to have a better world and a better life. So if we can all work together, that'll be fantastic.
Great, thank you, Andrea and Kim. You have actually mostly answered the first question that I want to ask, which is, what was your journey like starting or like going into the animal protection movement? And if you can maybe tell us a bit about, like, for example, if there were any difficulties starting, when you both started your own organization, and was it difficult at the beginning? Were there any specific challenges?
Well, I can start with that. So Hong Kong Shark Foundation actually was not started by myself. The Shark Foundation was started in 2008 by a group of concerned citizens. And they've sort of, we've just sort of taken it from there. I was working in the corporate world in 2015, as I said, and my story is I actually saw a presentation by one of the founders at the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club, and I was so blown away by what I saw. I just couldn't believe that I had been actually, by eating shark fin soup, say at a wedding or at an annual dinner, I didn't realize that I was actually negligently contributing to the problem. And at that time, I was a vegetarian, and I didn't really eat uh, shark or fish, but sometimes I would. And now today I'm a vegan. I don't see how I can advocate for the saving and the no consumption of sharks and shark meat and shark fins as a species, and then on the other hand turn around and eat some salmon or eat a chicken. So we call that speciesism, actually. And where you choose to eat one and not another, and I call that hypocrisy. So if we're really truly dedicated animal rights advocates, we need to reconsider our consumption of any kind of animal products. And for me personally, I have become a dedicated animal rights advocate because, well, for three reasons. One, of course, for the animals. And secondly, for you, those out there listening, for the planet. And thirdly, for my own health. I just don't do it for one. I have multiple convictions. So my journey started because I went to the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club in Hong Kong, and I saw a presentation. I was so blown away. Over 100 million sharks are killed every year just for their fins. And in fact, I have come to learn that more than 270 million sharks are killed every year. Now, what is the cause of that? And this is what's so interesting. It's all about education. And so, I was working in the corporate world. I'm an ex-lawyer. And so I have plenty of education, literally. We go to school for 7 years, right? But why was I so lacking in the knowledge of what I was doing, the cause and effect? And so that's really what made me quit my job and become a full-time animal rights activist. And just to get involved and to be the voice for the voiceless. And I do like to say that I used to work for sharks as a lawyer, working for other lawyers, but now I'm very happy to say that I save sharks. So, in terms of the challenges, well, that's kind of my story and how I got into it. But again, it's not, it wasn't my charity, but I am very passionate about it. People often think it is my charity, but hats off to people like Kim, who, have full-time jobs that are very demanding, but they also can find the time to give back. And I think that's super important. I think it was the first time I heard this was Dr. Sylvia Earle, and she said, not everybody can do everything, but everyone can do something. And that is just so true, right? And so, I try to get people more involved in our movement, and we have different campaigns. Like we have a shark-free wedding campaign. So if you're going to get married, or if you've gotten married and you didn't have shark at your wedding, let me know about it. I want to put your story up on our website, okay? We have another campaign called the Shark-Free Company campaign. And that company is where corporates can take advantage of the corporate social responsibility, the ESGs, or SDGs, as we call them, Sustainable Development Goals. This is where companies can get their employees on board by having no shark fin at any company events, which is fantastic. It's a win-win-win situation. And the third way is our education program, which has really been successful. I came in 2015 and started teaching kids. I think I taught about 2,365 kids in 2016. By the end of 2019, I had spoken to over 11,000 kids about the global shark crisis and what they can do to make a difference. That was a 350% increase. Now we got hit by COVID. That was pretty hard for us, 2020. But we've come back, and so far this year for 2021, we've spoken to over 8,000 students in Hong Kong and overseas. I've done a talk in Malaysia. I've done a talk in the US. So if you're overseas and you're listening and you would like me to give a talk, say on Zoom, please do reach out to me. I would be super privileged if I could come and speak to you. That would be great. Yeah. Or you could ask Kim and I, and we could come as a panel. If you're putting together some kind of event, we love to. It's all about getting the word out there. So that's a little bit about me and what our mission is, and how I sort of got into it. Thanks.
I've heard Andrea speak 100 times, and she's amazing. And I really would recommend anyone overseas who wants to learn more about sharks and, you know, the amazing work that the Shark Foundation do, just to send them an email, reach out on LinkedIn, Facebook, WhatsApp, WeChat, I think you have as well. And yeah, Weibo, and just get them to come talk to you, because it's really interesting. I mean, the first time I heard Andrea speak, I sort of had my hands in my head, because I had no idea the devastation that shark fin, or the shark fin trade, causes the shark population. I mean, we're facing a mass extinction of sharks because of the way we consume these products. So something has to change, and I mean, it's an amazing opportunity if you want to learn more. Reach out to them. Honestly, it's world changing. It's well worth learning about. But in terms of the challenges that I have, I mean, Andrea said, I have a full-time job. I wish I could do this full-time, because my passion is animal and animal law. I want to spend all my time doing what I can for animals, changing the law for the better. But we just don't have enough work in Hong Kong. Animal law is a very small area. Not many people do it, and not many cases go to court. So I have to supplement by doing actual law work, which is really boring, but I have to pay the bills. So hopefully one day, with more and more people thinking about these issues and thinking about how they can change and how they can contribute to change, then maybe the animal law sphere will grow, and, you know, people can make a living out of it. But until then, I think I'll have to keep my day job.
So I'd like to just, Angela, if I can just jump in there. You know, I'd like to talk just a little bit about some of the challenges. So if any of our participants, you know, work for an NGO or any other organization, some of the challenges that, you know, we have struggled with, and the biggest challenge really for us is funding. Okay, it's constantly looking for money to keep going, because the reality is, it's, you know, we have, it's not going to just show up, and we're not a big organization like some of these other NGOs that are international. And so getting the word out is, you know, to enough people where we can plant those seeds of change, but at the same time, finding funding to keep our program going is just a never-ending battle. And there is a certain amount of bias in the world, unfortunately, and that bias is actually that animals don't have the same kind of rights as humans, and because of that, they're seen as less. So, you know, we are always trying to quantify for people, especially in the corporate world, why sharks as apex predators are so important. You know, they keep and maintain that delicate marine ecosystem. And if you think of the game Jenga, we've probably played that before, you know, the delicate marine ecosystem is like the Jenga game. And if you pull out a block, like an apex predator, like a shark, and it collapses, there are devastating ramifications within the ecosystem. And climate change has to do with climate change. It has to do with the temperature of the water. I mean, sharks are basically like the cleaners of the ocean. They prey upon, actually, they're opportunists. They prey upon the weak, the sick. And so that's super important for us to remember, that if we lose sharks, we're actually going to have a huge problem. And it's going to have a knock-on effect everywhere in the world, not just, say, in Hong Kong, where I've been here for 30 years and we don't have sharks. But if you go out to a public beach, you will see a shark net around the beach. Why do we have a shark net in Hong Kong, yet we don't have any sharks? Well, that is because we used to have sharks. And when I first came to Hong Kong in like 1991, we actually had 6 people killed by shark attacks. We don't know if it was 1 or 2. And our solution to that was to hire a very high profile Australian guy named Vic Hyslop and come out like a crocodile Dundee. And we paid him a lot of money, and he found a shark and he held it up in public and he said, "Here's the shark. This is the culprit." And he left with his money. And of course, we still had sharks. But, there was no telltale sign. There was no forensic evidence in the stomach of the shark that this was the shark that actually ate those 6 people that had been swimming that morning. But as a result, we basically have overfished the shark population. Not only have we overfished the shark population, we have overfished the fish that the sharks eat. So there's no food chain here, really. We still have, lots of coral and we have fish. You can go out and dive, but we just don't have sharks. And if you're a diver or a snorkeler, the holy grail is really to see a shark. And that is becoming more and more uncommon. And there are over 500 species of shark in the world, but there are only 12. There are only 12 sharks protected by law under the CITES Convention. And Hong Kong honors that. So the challenge for us is, educating people, changing cognitive behavior, right? And making people realize that when they're going, even though young people don't want to have shark at their wedding, we have a phenomenon called passive consumption. And what that means is, young people like Angel, they might want to get married, but they're not going to have, yes, and Kim, yes, but what happens is, your parents might be paying for the wedding, or your rich auntie, right? Or your grandparents. And in that situation, they really cling to that tradition, especially in Hong Kong, of what we call bao sam chi to. It's for 4 important, very high valued items, which is abalone, sea cucumber, which is not a cucumber at all, by the way. It's a slug, it's an animal. Shark fin and fish maw or fish bladder. So bao sam chi to are the 4 things that restaurants came up with to sell to people if they want to have a successful, happy, lucky marriage. And so it's a marketing campaign. Because if we look at historically, shark fin soup didn't come in to play in China until around 960 AD, which is in the Song Dynasty. And it's because there was a poet named Mr. Mei Yao Chen, and the emperor saw his poem about shark fin soup. And the next thing you know, it becomes a status symbol. So it's no different today, where you all might go out to lunch or dinner with your friends, and you put your Gucci wallet on the table and, your expensive car fob, if you are a car. It's about impressing your friends and your family to show that you're successful. And this is all over the world. This is not something that we just do in Hong Kong. So the challenges are education, funding, right? But also there are legal challenges. And of course, Kim, you can speak to this better than I can, but we have had some success to get the government behind us. I can speak to the government ban on shark fin at government banquets. That was something that we were pushing for in 2011. And the government here said, no, we're not interested in participating. And then China changed their policy in 2012 in order to combat corruption, and so they put into place a no shark fin soup in China at any government banquets, and the Hong Kong government in 2013 followed suit. So that was a good legal change. And basically government entities no longer were going out to dinner and impressing people with very expensive banquets, gaoji gambu, right? Haishen gaji gambu kind of thing. I've seen that on a receipt that I got, which is high ranking, like customs food. And I was like, what is this? So, there are ways that people could be creative to bribe. And so that's more difficult to do now. So I think since that law. But we have a new law that got grandfathered in. And in Hong Kong, traditionally, Cap 586, which is the protection of endangered animals like shark and pangolin and tiger and elephant and ivory, all these types of endangered items are protected under Cap 586 in Hong Kong, but it's limited to the powers of the Customs and the Agricultural and Fisheries Conservation Department, or AFCD as we call it. So luckily we've got new law that has just been passed August 18th of 2021, which now grandfathers in all of these endangered species like shark, and says that under the Organized and Serious Crime Ordinance, that the government can now go after the paper trail and can seize assets. So, there is positive work going on in the government. Now we just hope they will hire more people to enforce it, because it's one thing to have a law, but it's another thing to enforce that law. So the challenge is, just to recap for any NGO, I think, is funding, being able to reach out to your constituents, right? These are my clients are sharks. And, on behalf of my clients, I'm advocating. So, and the final is to get the law behind you so that it gives you the muscle to go after these people that are making hundreds, billions of US dollars off of this industry, off of the exploitation of animals. And so, these are some of the challenges that we've had, and we're always looking for people to get involved. If you're listening and you're interested in getting involved as a volunteer, for example, or you want to be an intern, or if you want to, get involved in your school, we just reach out to me. I'm super happy to mentor you on that and show you how easy it is to take action. So that's just a little bit about the challenges that we are experiencing.
I think it's also really important for everyone to realize that in life, but especially in Hong Kong, change doesn't happen overnight. So you can't just click your fingers and then everything happens. Some of these things that Andrea is talking about, it's been 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even longer. So what's really important for all of us passionate about animals and, being the voice for animals is just to keep doing that. Just because it doesn't happen overnight doesn't mean it won't happen. We just have to persistently and consistently keep advocating. Okay, so that's one of the challenges that I think needs to be addressed. Just because it takes long doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means we need to put more effort in and just keep at it. Yeah. And I think we see that quite often in Hong Kong, and especially with sharks. So long as we can work together, then hopefully things can get done.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim and Andrea, for just now sharing all of your insights. I didn't know about the Australian guy. It was new to me. Like,
it's crazy, And you know what, Angel, a lot of people don't realize that, and that's part of my talk. This is a global shark crisis. Okay. And here in Hong Kong, we've grown up and we know shark fin soup as really the main reason for the consumption of sharks. And part of that is because people were demanding that high price. But actually the country that eats the most shark in the world. Kim, do you remember this from my talk?
Brazil.
Yes, good. Hey, yay. So Brazil is actually the largest consumer of shark in the world. Not shark fin, but shark meat and shark products. So what happened in about the 80s was people were taking sharks, cutting the fins off and throwing them overboard because small fishermen or whatever, they couldn't take the whole shark. It was a 20-meter shark in their boat. They can't afford that space. So they want the high price, high value fins. But what happened was somebody got smart and started to extract the oil from the shark liver. And then they put it into supplements. And those supplements are called squalene. And then they started to market that to Chinese people all over the world. So if you go to Macau, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, everybody buys these capsules called supplements, the squalene supplements. And they're saying it cures anti-aging, arthritis, puts collagen in your body. The list is long. And those shark supplements are really coming from New Zealand, Australia, the United States, Costa Rica, Spain, all over the world, right? But when you look at the packaging has Chinese writing on it because they know that that's the target market. So it's not just about shark fins. It's about using the oil from the liver to put in women's lipstick. So that's why I really advocate people, if you're going to buy lipstick, be sure to try to buy a lipstick that you have researched is cruelty-free, animal-free. That's super important. I was online and I was looking up and I found a lipstick, and online it was by David Bowie's wife, Iman. And she's doing a complete animal free. And I was like, this is so cool, right? So I really advocate we as consumers try to be more engaged and more aware. It's not just supplements, the shark liver oil that's going into the lipstick and the moisturizers, but it's going into facial products and makeup, women's makeup. And actually, we find that Italy is number 2 in the world for shark consumption. Italy, right? Everybody's like, no way. But in fact, what they're doing is they're eating shark meat, like a tuna steak or a swordfish steak. They're eating a shark steak. They're using the oil to go into the makeup industry, which is huge in Italy. They're using the leather from the skin of the shark to tan it and then put it into bags and purses. And Hermes is doing Gucci, doing lots of things with shark skin. So this is not a Chinese issue. I think this is very important to understand. Yes, we are guilty here in China of negligently contributing to the crisis. I agree. But we are aware of that and we can make a difference. So I thought it was all about shark fins when I first started learning this, and it's not. And that's what's driven the numbers up from the 100 million every year to the 270 million. It's the maddening consumption of fish. And I hope all of you have seen Seaspiracy, because it's very important to understand the message that comes out of that movie. I know people are critical about that, but I think we can't throw away the baby with the bathwater. We have to realize that, nothing's going to be perfect, especially a hard-hitting documentary like that. But the point of that is, number one, we are overfishing sharks. Okay, we're overfishing the whole ocean. And we need to change our consumption habits, right? And number two, the takeaway from that movie is, believe it or not, and I don't think people really realize that a lot of times, is go plant-based. Even if it's a meatless Monday or a fishless Friday, try it out for a day. And I think that's super important for us to make those cognitive behavior changes on our level, so that we can actually, whether it's carbon footprint reducing or, cutting back on the meat consumption so it reduces the methane gas, I think we can all do something. And that's what animal well, this is what this conference is all about, isn't it? You know, AAC is all about teaching people about what they can do on a local level. So I hope there is some amount of takeaway and understanding, a little bit of better understanding. We're all about teaching and learning. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. And actually, I have a follow-up question, if that's okay. So you mentioned that obviously this is a global crisis, and it's not just the Finns, it's a lot more than that. So given the scale of this problem and the intricacy of it, are you currently, or do you have plans to work with maybe like regional or international groups, campaigns to tackle this?
Well, yes, absolutely. In fact, there are so many sharp organizations out there. I don't know if you can see this, but I had to make myself an NLP, or you can't really read it. I had to make myself a chart with, you know, all the different organizations that are out there. You know, there's Oceana, there's Make Stewardship Count, there's Shark Allies, Shark Stewards, Shark Trust, Shark Finning EU, which has a petition going on right now. There's Shark Guardians out of the UK and Phuket. They're in both places. There's Sharks for Kids, which is in the Bahamas, which is where I used to live on a sailboat, which is I saw my first shark, you know. There's Wild Aid. There's big organizations like WWF. So we're always collaborating constantly. I feel that when we collaborate with other organizations, there's strength in numbers, right? But the reality is everybody wants to promote themselves to, you know, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So we try to keep an open mind, and we're always open for doing more. But it's definitely a challenge, Angel, and we need to, you know, the goalpost is constantly changing. And what was a challenge to us just maybe 6 years ago has really changed, given that we now have so much COVID, and we have a new political situation in Hong Kong, which definitely has put a certain amount of challenge into the work we do, because part of the work we do as animal rights advocates is a certain amount of civil disobedience, you know, getting the word out there. And we were successful when we worked with Wild Aid in January 1, 2020. We worked with Wild Aid to ask Maxime's group, which has 55 seafood restaurants. We asked them to stop serving shark fin soup for a couple of years, and they said no, they weren't really interested in that. And then we started a letter writing campaign, and then we started a petition online. And then we started to wear shark costumes and go to their restaurants. And eventually they saw the benefit of being a corporate, socially responsible company, and they stopped serving shark fin as of January 1, 2020. So, you know, they saw that it was important to change, but it took a little convincing different ways. It's even more difficult now from a challenge standpoint for us to do things like that here in Hong Kong. So we need the help of your listeners and people out there who are also very involved. And I hope they will consider to get involved with us at least and get more active.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think so long as everyone has the same mission or goal. It doesn't matter if they're trying to promote themselves, they're, you know, sharing posts on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So long as they are doing this with the same goal, then we all move forward. We don't want to move backwards, because backwards is a terrible place to be. We want to keep moving forward. We want to keep changing things. So long as the community stays together and has the same goal moving forward, then I think, you know, things can happen. And what Andrea said is really important, and it's so fundamental. We live on this earth with animals, right? We share the world with animals. So we need to change or alter human practices to learn to live and coexist with animals. I mean, we can't keep choosing to kill or cull or, you know, eat and whatever. We have to learn to live with them. And that's a big thing. And so if we can change the way we live and the practices that we employ each and every day, be it, no meat Mondays, fishless Fridays, say no to shark fin soup, these little things all add up.
Well, so Kim, I think that's a good point. Maybe you could speak a little bit about what's going on with the wild boar situation here in Hong Kong, because it's it's pretty sad. That's definitely a going backward. Maybe you can set the scenario a little bit about what it was and how active you were in trying to change the situation.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the situation in Hong Kong, I don't know if your listeners are aware, but I think it was last week we had 7 wild boars being euthanized by the government because they were wild boars in a wild place. So this is quite a shift in policy. So the government used to have this wildlife culling policy because there were too many wild boars. They were endangering people. They were getting into people's rubbish. So they used to just shoot the boars. And there was a big public outcry because, I mean, they're innocent animals. They're just looking for food. So they stopped that, which was great. And then all of a sudden, come last week, 2021, 4 years later, we've gone backwards again. So exactly what I said, we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. But we've gone backwards to the cull, to the euthanizing of wild boars. So the policy used to be if they were dangerous or if they were aggressive and attacked people, then they would take those sorts of measures. And I can understand that. But the 7 that were killed last week, they were innocent boars. In fact, what the government and the AFCD did was to lure them out from where they were living, where they were hiding. They were in the bush, in the wilderness. They would lure the boars out. The boars came down because, hey, it's a buffet, it's free food, I'm happy. And then they would shoot them. So it's just a very backwards way of thinking. And the way I've seen it, and our organization sees it, and a lot of other organizations see, non-lethal methods should always be employed before lethal methods. You try everything before you take, the drastic measure of taking an animal's life. In Hong Kong, we've had, I live in the mid-levels, which is quite an urban area, but we still have lots of hills, and I see wild boars, and I'm sure Andrea may or may not, but I see them every night, and I can watch TV on my couch, and I can listen for exactly when the wild boars come because I can hear the rubbish bins being knocked over. So we've, as humans, we've conditioned these pigs to come into urban areas because they know humans equals food. And where there's humans, there's food. And I know those orange rubbish bins contain the leftovers from humans. So there's going to be food. So every night they're knocking these bins over. Now, the government have actually done research and they've made changes to these rubbish bins to make them more animal proof. And they did this last year, but nothing's been actually put into the public. I've never seen one of these rubbish bins ever. They also have this, the program where it's very similar to trap, neuter, release. It's a contraception program whereby they take the wild boars, they, fix them, and then they release them back out to the wild so they can't reproduce anymore. It's 92% effective, but it's expensive. So that sort of brings up the question, is the government not doing this because it's too expensive and killing the animals is much easier and much cheaper? I don't know. I'd like to think it probably is. So that's the problem. And in terms of the way the law is in Hong Kong, we have bans on feeding wild animals. Okay, you can't feed wild animals in certain areas. Now, the certain areas found in up in the parks and the walks and the nature trails that we have, but the pigs aren't there. The pigs are in town now because the people are in town, but the feeding ban doesn't cover those areas. So if I went down to the street and I fed a wild pig some bread, a banana, whatever, I'm not breaking any laws because it's not part of the captured area. So what we need to do, I mean, it's education. And as Andrea said, we're farmers, we sow the seeds. I love that line, by the way, I use it all the time. We sow the seeds so people start thinking about some of these things. We need to educate people, why is it bad that, why should I stop feeding wild boars? Well, you're disrupting their normal lives. They're coming into urban areas where there shouldn't be because they know that there's food there. We need to stop that. And I think the bottom line is we need to keep wildlife wild. Just leave them alone. Killing them is never the solution. It's never a short-term solution. It's definitely not a long-term solution. So why are we doing it?
Absolutely. I think we can continue the discussion for a long time.
Yes.
At the same time, I noticed that we have some questions coming in from the audience, and I am aware of time, so I want to make sure we address those. So I'll read them out loud. The first one is from, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Hambali Hamden. So the question is, what do you think about China's plan to reduce animal meat consumption or production by 50%? And the following question by Pona, and does that 50% reduction plan affect Hong Kong too?
Well, I'm happy to start on that one, if that's okay with you, Kim.
Yeah.
China's plan to reduce animal meat production is fantastic. I mean, how can you argue with that, especially as a vegan, right? And if especially if you're a Buddhist, right? He's a 佛教人, right? And you're 吃素, right? You're eating vegetarian, eating vegan anyway. And that's global harmony news to our ears, right? And so, yes, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's fantastic. I mean, factory farming is a huge problem, right? Whether it's CO2 and methane or whether it's just animal suffering. It's just, even my 19-year-old son, when he was in school in Hong Kong in about grade 4, when he was about 8 or 9, the teacher started teaching them about factory farming. If we had all of that, then we wouldn't have the type of consumption that we have of animals. Seafood. Hong Kong people love seafood. Let me just say that, okay? And, we have the second highest consumption in Asia. Second highest. I don't know who's first. I just know this stat someone gave me. And we are the 8th highest in the world for seafood consumption. We love our seafood. So, Hong Kong people consume something like 65 kilos of seafood a year. 65, that is quite a lot. And so how are we going to change that? I guess if it's 50% reduction in meat and animal production, fantastic. And once they start, if they really were to do that and they were to look more at plant-based, fantastic, that would probably grow. They would see how positive that was in reducing pollution, right? Waste, as in reducing CO2. I think that would be amazing. And so I'm absolutely all for that.
Yeah, I think it's great in terms of a thought and practicality, but the bottom line is where there's a demand, there will always be a need. So it's that very problem that Andrea was talking about. If people want to consume something, they will find a way to consume it. And if the demand is lessened, people will put the prices up, and people will pay. So I mean, it's great that they want to reduce animal meat production, and and especially given all the issues with factory farming and things like that. But whether that will change anything or whether that'll make the situation worse, I don't know. But it's at least a positive step. And whether that plan affects Hong Kong, well, I tend to think whatever Big Brother does, we do. So I'm assuming it's going to follow suit, but I won't. I won't. I won't be a fortune teller.
Sure, thank you both. And yeah, in terms of the demand and supply, and another, I guess, scenario that we wouldn't want to see is we driving the consumption underground and driving the illegal trade.
Underground hamburgers.
All right, and then we have another question that maybe Kim you'd like to take. So this question is from Liz Nari, and they ask, how do you get governments to adopt laws on animal welfare? This is quite probably a broad question, but if you could maybe give some pointers or your insights.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a question that I ask myself all the time. I mean, the first thing you have to try and figure out is, what is the problem and why is it a problem? And then once you know what the problem is, see what the government's position is and why is it the government's position. I mean, with animal welfare, welfare is based on science. It's matter of fact. So with science, things change, things evolve. It's what was okay welfare in the 1900s may not be okay now. So that needs to evolve. And if the government still has their mindset in, old, outdated animal welfare policies, then that's a reason for them to change, because the science has now dictated that it should change, because this is now what we know about animal welfare. So it's finding out what it is that they say the position is, why they say the position is this, and then perhaps even just saying, well, hang on, this is where we are in 2021, 2022. This is what you should be doing, government, to be a responsible government in trying to protect the welfare of animals. So that's trying to answer a very broad question with a very, very broad answer, but hopefully that helps.
I'd like to just speak on that a little bit. You're exactly right, Kim. And but I think that the short answer to Liz Nari's question is, how does you get the government to adopt change in law is pressure. Okay. Constituents, people need to let the government know what they feel and what they're thinking. Okay. Now, in places where your government, you don't have a democracy and where you don't have voting rights, okay, like in Hong Kong, then we have to think of other ways to get creative to let people in power who are making the laws know what the netizens know, what the populace want. And the way you do that is get together with other organizations and write letters. We recently were able to enact this CAP 455 OSCO, Organized and Serious Crime Ordinance, because we got one person in government, Elizabeth Quat, to step forward and actually put in a private member's bill and then start the ball rolling. But it was because 30 or 40 different organizations signed on to a letter to the government. And that's that kind of pressure we have to put on. In UK, Canada, and the United States, you can vote out a leader that doesn't represent the constituents' beliefs. And that's how basically voting and democracy works. But where you don't have that freedom, you have to get creative. And that doesn't mean that the government's not willing to listen to you. Like, look at that. China's pledged to have 50% less consumption, right? That is based on climate change, pollution, and obviously people are saying we need to change this. So you need to figure out ways that you can get through to your government, whether it's writing a petition, getting a letter writing campaign going, getting other NGOs signed on so that there's pressure being put on and so that your voice can be heard by the government. So I just wanted to kind of summarize some of those things that we have done in the past successfully. And, you know, it's not always easy, but don't give up, stay hopeful.
Absolutely.
Amazing tips. Thank you, both of you. We have 5 minutes left, so I want to ask if any of our audience here live or in the future online are interested in getting involved, how can they do so? Where can they reach you? If you want to share your social media links, websites, etc. in the chat box, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, well, ours is HKALPO. I'm sure Angel will link it somehow to her audience. We've got Instagram, Facebook, you know, all of the social media. We've got a website with news that we have. We have events coming up. We have projects that we're working on. If people want to know and learn more about what we're trying to do, that's going to be an amazing place. And we have a newsletter that goes out every month. It's full of interesting and sometimes random animal related things. So it's a good read. And if, yeah, I mean, just as Andrea said, just the support from everyone is so crucial to ensure that we can make change. So thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you very much for supporting, you know, AAC and animals.
Great. Yeah, and for the Shark Foundation, you know, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and we're in Weibo in China. And, you know, I think people out there in China, they want to help and they want to be more involved. And I recently gave a talk where Weibo and WeChat we were using a platform where we could get out to people. And, you know, I had 166,000 people dial in just to hear my talk. It's very powerful. People want to be involved. They want to learn more. And what we're doing is right. You know, we have a saying, 没有买卖就没有杀害, that when the buying stops, the killing stops too. And how we're going to stop that buying is we need people like all of you to be our shark ambassadors. So if you want to get active, I've put my email in the group chat, but you can find me anywhere. I'm out there. Everybody knows the Hong Kong Shark Lady. So yeah, let's connect and get involved and make a difference.
Andrea won't say this, but there's a wonderful YouTube video where Andrea gives a TED talk and she's wearing a shark costume. So if anyone wants to see Andrea in a shark costume, go to YouTube and it's there.
Yeah, well, you know, by hook or by crook, right? So we got to get that message out there. And, you know, I want to sign off, say thanks so much, Angel and Ellie and everybody. Thanks, Charles. And, you know, there's so many wonderful animal rights activists out there. And I highly encourage people to just find an organization that you feel a little bit passionate about and just do a little something. You know, the more that you learn about wildlife, then the more you can respect it. And it's an education process. And, you know, I'm here and I'm happy to be a part of this learning process. So let's make some noise and let's get together and save some animals.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's wonderful way to wrap up our panel. Let's give our two amazing panelists, Andrea and Kim, a round of